Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, addicts of all ages, welcome to Canadian Sober, eh? I'm Dougie Fresh, resident alcoholic. So glad you could join us. Before I start, I would just love to say, I'm sitting here right now and an overwhelming feeling of gratitude is going through my body. So I would love to give a huge thank you to all the people who have been involved with this show, and especially the producer of the show, Deanne. Thank you so much for giving us a platform to spread awareness, spread the message of hope and recovery, and Dougie Fresh cannot be Dougie Fresh without all of you. So thank you so much for allowing this, and I hope to continue this for many more years. So thank you so much. Now on to the guest. I met this person a little over a year ago, and when I first met her, she was very shy, she was very quiet, and she didn't say too much. And now she's become one of my best friends in sobriety, and I really love it when she comes into meetings, because I know people are going to get stuff out of her share. So I hope you at home get something out of her share today. Kate, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
So for the world that has no idea who Kate is, who's Kate?
Yeah. Man, that is a loaded question, to be honest. I also just wanted to say that you have become one of my favorite people. So I'm really glad, I've met some amazing people in recovery, and that has filled my soul for sure. I grew up around addiction and mental health issues, so I kind of feel like I was exposed to it really young. So for me, you talk a lot about stigmas and things like that. It wasn't a stigma, it was pretty natural, and things, were going on in my house when I was younger. So kind of had an introduction to it when I was quite young. With that introduction came a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have known or seen when I was younger, and led to a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, a lot of chaos in my life. And because of that, I learned to be a people pleaser. I learned to be shy. I learned to put all of my problems aside and to just be the good person, a good daughter, good sister, good friend. And I pushed everything very, very deep inside. And as a result, I think that's kind of what led me down the path that I went on. That being said, one of the things that I always talk about when I share my story is that I have great memories. I grew up in a great house. There was lots of love. We had a big family. I never left wanting as a kid. I spent summers at my cottage. I just have great memories. And so I think there's this idea that there's this all this doom and gloom around, going into addiction or anything like that. And it's really not. So I think you can still come from different backgrounds. Addiction doesn't differentiate between you. And that's one of my biggest things, because yes, I've had a great and blessed life. However, I think those pain points and the traumas and the chaos and all of that tends to build and compound on top of each other. And I think that's really what happened with me. I did go through quite a few hard traumas, and I don't tend to talk too much about them because I think everybody has trauma. I think as soon as your mind is altered by something, that's a trauma. So it's all about how you learn to cope with those traumas, and we learn from the people that are around us. So me growing up in an addiction household, that's what I learned. I learned to stuff things down and deal with it on my own. So I always like to say that I started my drinking career kind of drinking with all my friends, having a good time. I thought I was living life. which, a lot of younger kids do. And I ended my drinking career very much alone and, wanting to end my life. So that is the progressive disease of addiction. And again, I think those things all happen because you're trying to run away from the pain. You don't want to face the traumas because those are hard things. Those are very scary, very real things that you have to face. And I did that for many years. And I somehow still kept up the charade of everything was fine. I was still the good, partner and good daughter and good sister and good friend, to the point where, by the time I was at the peak of my addiction, nobody was asking me to get help. Nobody was telling me I needed help. And I hear that story a lot in recovery. And at first I couldn't identify with it because I didn't have that. I still had the house, the car, the family, all of that. I hadn't lost everything yet. So I think that's the important part. My dad died a couple of years ago. That was a very big trigger for me to look at myself and my issues and my traumas. That was a huge trauma very late in life. And that's kind of where I decided I had hit this moral bottom. It wasn't a physical bottom, but it was a moral bottom, and I sought out recovery. So I found a program that worked for me, and I found and surrounded myself with people like you and some of my best friends today, some of the best people I've ever met. And what I learned very quickly was that recovery isn't just sobriety. Being sober and not drinking or not, doing whatever you were doing, that's one part of recovery, but recovery is actually healing. And it's about unlearning the things that you learned your whole life on how to react to things and how to cope with things and everything in between. So, and that takes a long time. It took you however long to get to a point. So it's going to take you a long time to unlearn those things. And I'm still doing that today. It's a lifetime thing. And, I think what I got to was that the fear of me ending my life and not being here outgrew the fear of facing the stuff that was inside me. And I learned that your secrets keep you sick. The things you keep inside, they don't poison anybody else, they poison yourself. And yeah, that was a huge part of, why I couldn't get sober, even though I tried many times. And so, yeah, it's a well-rounded, today I see it as a well-rounded part of my life. And I think that everybody has pain and everybody has trauma, and I was definitely running away from those things. And today, I'm happier and I'm healthier and I'm more peaceful, and I can give that away to others, and which is one of the biggest blessings that I could ever have, is to talk to somebody else who might be suffering or hurting. So, yeah.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. You touched on so many things that were like sending little sparks to my head, and I really appreciate that. You talked about healing, and alcohol really, at least we've been taught that alcohol is a depressant. And it kind of keeps you in that mindset of you don't really deal with the problems that you have, and you drink them away, but those problems don't go away. They stay there, So, do you agree with that do you agree with that? It's a depressant?
Yes, absolutely. I think it does this, but it definitely, you end up here. And definitely that's where I ended up, for sure. And, I think life doesn't change, you change, right? So life's not going to change for you.
And you also talked though about a rock bottom. Do you believe the rock bottom that you had was your rock bottom?
I think the ultimate rock bottom is death.
Yes.
But I've seen it in addiction. And I think there are layers So I think that was a bottom for me. I could have probably kept digging, but that was a hard, I don't know if it was a bottom, it was a hard layer that I wasn't willing to go down any further with.
Yeah, it's sad because like I've only been doing this for a little over 8 years, and I've already seen so much death in the last 8 years because the things that we've known forever, you know, and we get addicted to it, and you just can't get out of it. And it's not necessarily that people don't want the help. It's just that you're stuck in that vortex of, like, you know, doing the same thing over again. I think that's why it's taught to us that we practice the same things kind of like every day, like a routine, like making your bed in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, doing your readings, going for a walk, you know, and doing all this other stuff. So what do you do on a daily basis to make sure Kate is staying level-headed?
I have a lot, actually. I have a morning meditation that kind of grounds me. You know, it keeps me sane throughout my day. I think my biggest thing is I just remind myself every morning that I want to leave my life with love and kindness. You never know what other people are going through, so being kind throughout your day, even when you don't want to. You know, keeping your side of the street clean, kind of thing. I think that's a reminder that I give myself every morning. And then, yeah, I have a lot of, you know, tips and tricks and techniques. I study a lot of breathing techniques. I have a lot of those kinds of things that I do throughout the day. If I feel like I'm being reactive to something, I definitely get out in nature. That's a big thing. Nature is huge for me. And, you know, my readings, I journal. The thing for me is making sure I'm getting everything out at the end of the day, because I don't want to keep anything in anymore.
Yeah.
Because that's what, you know, kept me sick. You know, I think shame and guilt and all those really heavy things are items that can weigh on people, and they start to take a toll over time. And I don't want to have any of those when I go to bed every night.
Yeah, and you know, you don't want to carry it with you, you know, because when we do that, when we carry stuff with us, it's like a, you know what I mean, like an extra 50 pounds that we just don't need.
Yeah.
You know, so you talked about, we've talked about healing, and we've talked about what Kate does on a daily basis to stay sane. What would you say that in the last, you know, year or so, maybe like a character defect, what would you say that something's changed dramatically with the way you, like, okay, so I'll give you an example. So I do a Wednesday night men's meeting, and I've been doing it since COVID, and these guys are amazing. Shout out to the Wednesday night crew. There's a gentleman there from Hawaii, and I won't break his anonymity, but he taught me the second rule. And so he says, for every year you're sober, you have 1 second grace period. So when something happens in my life and I feel the urge to react, with either saying something or doing something, I have 8 seconds today to decide whether or not I wanna like volunteer myself to be a part of that situation.
Okay.
Like you'd have 1 second, right? So like that's not much grace period for you. And what he says is that teaches me patience and tolerance, right?
Yeah.
So not necessarily that. What would you say something that you've maybe seen in the past year that you know you've changed that you used to do in active, like, addiction?
I mean, I used to try to control everything. I think addicts in general, that's the biggest part, right? We want to put on the show. We want to control. It's, you know, we want to, all the actors, we want them to do what we want them to do, right? And I still see that, you know, today. Like, there are times where I have to remind myself, this isn't the Kate show, you know, you have to You have to let it go. And that's a huge change I see in me, is that I can't, I'm not in control of other people. The only thing I can control is myself. And if I can get myself under control, that's the number one thing that's going to keep me sane and sober. I can't control what other people think of me, and nor is it any of my business. I can't control what they do. I can't control how they react, but I can control how I react.
I've had this scenario playing in the last 10 seconds in my brain of like what you just said is like go-karting,
Yeah.
And you're just like, you don't necessarily want to go, but you're like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna, not try to take over this situation, and I'm
Yes.
just gonna go with the flow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, going with the flow is huge. Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to ask you, and I kind of like want to ask every guest, and necessarily don't get it out, but why Recover Out Loud? Why be here today?
I think it's really important for people, especially young people, and especially young women, to know that they can get the help that they need. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about addiction and who you have to be to go, into recovery, and or how bad you have to be. And I think, that's the biggest thing for me. I didn't feel worthy in my life a lot of the time. By the end, I didn't feel worthy enough to even be here. And I don't ever want someone to think that they're not worthy coming into these rooms if they have a problem. Because I think when I first, came into recovery, I thought to myself, I'd hear people share and I'd be like, I don't, it's always like somebody else has, so much going on. Like, why am I complaining about, I don't know, simple things when somebody else has this happening? And it was this comparison. What I realized the longer I was in recovery is that, everyone is worthy if you need help. And, if you're suffering, you deserve to heal and you deserve love. And I think it's really important for people to know that there's help out there. And also too, I grew up with no stigma, so then to come into it and realize there was a stigma, that was huge for me. I was like, I have no shame in the things that I've gone through in my past. They've made me who I am today, and I just think that that's so important. Like, own who you are and own your story. So
yeah, it's crazy because I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on the show before, but I remember being at a recovery meeting and coming out to use the bathroom, and there was a lady standing there who was like a part of like the church, and I was wearing like nice clothes, and she looked at me and she said, "Oh, are you in that recovery meeting?" And I said, "I am." And she goes, "Oh, I didn't realize people like dressed like that." And I was like I didn't say it to her, but I was like thinking in my head, excuse me?
yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there is still that misconception about what an addict looks like, what an addict acts like, who an addict is, right? And we mentioned it a few weeks ago that an addict, like, addiction does not discriminate. It doesn't handpick people and say, I think I'm going to ruin this person's life today. It doesn't do that. So with the stigma still surrounding addiction and people in it, what do you think we could do as a society to change it?
I think exactly what we're doing right now. I think if more people recovered out loud or talked about it, I think it would become a more commonplace thing. I think people don't realize how common it is. And so I think the more you talk about it, and the more you make it known, the more society would see it as in a different way. I don't think that I don't think that a lot of people realize how bad it's gotten, especially recently, and how many deaths there are. And I think that's something that is kept out of a lot of media and generalized talks. And I think the more people that kind of get out there, you see the podcast popping up and everything. I think the more young people who get into it and start posting on social media and doing those things, I think the more that nobody's going to be able to ignore it anymore.
Yeah, it's I don't know how much you pay attention to the news. Like, I try to not pay attention as much as possible. It seems really depressing a lot of times. But one thing that is going to be affecting us as a recovery community is the new laws that they may be implementing in Ontario. And I don't know if you've heard about it, but Vancouver, BC, and Calgary, they've experienced it, where they decriminalized like major drugs like methamphetamines and cocaine and things like that. They weren't going to charge people for using. And what they noticed was a lot of death and a lot of destruction, and their numbers went skyrocketing and went up. Ontario is now talking about implementing those rules because the systems are overcrowded with people that are being arrested and are being charged with offenses with cocaine and meth and hard drugs. Do you think this is decriminalizing the things? Do you think this is a good idea or a bad idea?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if I've ever really had a stance on the political side of things, because I think if you really look at, like, my addiction is alcohol. I mean, that's been decriminalized forever and ever, and I think a lot of people die from it too. And I think a lot more people are affected by it than anybody knows. So I can't necessarily say that I agree or disagree, but I think I'd rather them talk more about getting people help than decriminalizing any sort of substance. I'd rather them talk about the mental health behind it and helping.
Yeah, so so if you were to say something right now to Trudeau, or to somebody that has pull and somebody that has power with addiction, what would you say?
I would say that we need to treat the people that are broken and the things that they have broken inside them. It's not just about treating the addiction, it's about treating people's mental health and their issues that they're running from and trying to avoid with addiction.
So would you say, because I know someone right now that is in a treatment center, and it's costing them a lot of money to be there. So would you say we need more government funding for, like, say, treatment or more addiction centers?
Yeah, I would love to see more access and more funding for people, especially in Ontario. I know a lot of people that go out to the West Coast because they have a lot more access out there, and they can get into better programs that I'm not sure, in terms of cost, but yeah, I would definitely say that I think we need to look at people's mental health, especially this day and age, and get them better access to those treatments.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'm concerned about, and it's been kind of a hot topic everywhere, like I seem to go, people are talking about it, the amount of weed shops that are popping up everywhere. Good or bad?
I mean, I don't necessarily think that you need 5 in the same, 3-block radius.
Yeah, Collingwood has 9.
Yeah, when you have more weed shops than you do Tim Hortons in a place, I think, you get to a point where it's a little concerning. I was never a weed person, but yeah, I do think that it does become concerning when, the government starts profiting off these places and they start popping up more.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to what recovery looks like in 10 years, especially when anybody can like go in now off the street and purchase something in there. And I've never been one, so I'm not really like trying to like judge it or like whatever. I just know that I've seen a lot of people either relapse or a lot of people be affected by it. And where before, like, you know, it was like that back alleyway and it's like, hey, you got the stuff? You know, like, and you'd like get like your dealer to give you like stuff. Now anybody can just walk in off the street to go get it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's scary.
It's scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I heard there's a celebration you're going to.
Yes.
And there's going to be lots of laughs probably. There's going to be some good food. Mocktail, to mocktail or to not mocktail?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a big mocktailer. That's part of how I get through some of my more awkward scenarios in public, for sure. Not that I don't ever say, like, I always tell people I just don't drink, but the thing with me is that I still enjoy the taste of some things, and I miss it. I think it's an individual basis, but I love me a good mocktail.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel like, you know, I'm not drinking the standard, or, you know, it's just a little bit of an elevation, and it makes me feel fancy.
Yeah, kind of like me and Perrier.
Yes.
Yeah, Perrier makes me feel fancy.
Indeed, yes. I don't drink them quite as much, but
Yeah, well, we had a guest on who said that she pours bubbly and it's in a wine glass still.
yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
it's still kind of feeling like that, you know, that cool vibe, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So would you say your life today is clean and sober, more funner than what you had before?
100%, 110%. I still have problems, and I still have things I deal with on a daily basis. I didn't get sober, and then all of a sudden, poof, all my problems just poofed themselves away. But yeah, I have more laughs, more fun, and more genuine. Like, I'm present. I know what's going on around me, and I feel whole. I feel like I've found my wholeness again. Yeah.
Good for you. I'm so grateful you're here today. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks everybody for tuning in to Canadian Sober. So glad you were here with us. Please come back and see us again. We'd love to have you. And peace and love wherever you are. Have a great one.